Welcome to the Pocket Hole Solution to Tables. The project featured in this video will provide you with a solid foundation of assembly skills needed to build many styles of tables in a variety of shapes and sizes. With pocket hole joinery as its foundation, this project combines the experience of a master woodworker with the high quality of Kreg pocket hole tools and accessories. Pocket hole joinery is an extremely fast, strong, and simple method of joining wood, making it one of the most popular joinery techniques available today. We're confident that after watching this video, you'll be able to create your own custom tables for any room in your house. Be sure to check out Kreg's variety of entertaining reference materials, including educational videos, book sets, and project plans at www.kregtool.com.
Hi, I'm John Silloats. In the next half hour, I'm going to show you how to make this coffee table. As a matter of fact, by the time you finish seeing this whole show, you'll be able to make any table you want. I did it all myself, but I couldn't have done it without the help of the K2000 Kreg Pocket Hole Jig. In this show, I'm going to show you how to put the top together, and this is laminated boards, several boards put together, not clamped, but glued and pocket holed together to give me a nice solid top. I'm also going to show you how to make these legs and how to attach these legs to the top by also adding in these skirts. Once we're done, that'll be the first level of this table, and it can be a functional table at that point. The next step is to show you how to add in the center shelf. Now the center shelf has an edge banding on it, as well as edge banded onto ply material, which is another little trick and good to know when building tables. From that step down, an additional shelf that's going to support the drawers that I've put in here. And the drawers themselves, well, guess what? They're made with pocket hole screws as well, and the pocket holes that are in here make this a very strong and durable drawer. On the side, earth magnets, and those magnets are centered in the center of the drawers and into the framework of the table so that when you close them, they grab and they hold in the center. If you want it to go out the other side, no problem. Push it back through and it'll hold tight as well. When it's all said and done, it's a fast project, all the joints are strong, and the best part of it all, this little jig makes it very simple to do. The first thing to do is select the stock you're going to use. Lay it out so you can see what you have. Next step, because we're going to laminate this all together, we want to make sure we have a nice clean line, a straight line, so we take it over to the jointer. Now the first thing to do is look down the board and see if there's any cup or any warpage. Look for the straightest edge possible, set it up on the infeed table side and start pushing through. Once onto the outfeed table, keep all the pressure on the outfeed so you get a nice, even, clean line across the board, and it gives you a great finish. Next step, once you're satisfied with that, take it over to your table saw. Now at the table saw, set the saw blade. Bring your fence into position and use the jointed edge against the fence and run it through slowly. This glue line blade will open up the pores of the wood and give me a great 90-degree angle from the table on the one side. Once finished there, you can flip it over and do the other side and have a good, clean, crisp edge on both sides. Now take your time running this board through the saw because you want to make sure that you don't burn the wood. Any place that the wood is burnt, well guess what? The glue is not going to stick to it because the pores of the wood will be sealed, and that'll be a weak spot when you laminate these pieces together. The next thing, lay them out on the table, check. I've got no spaces in between each board. Perfect, exactly what I want. The next step is make sure that the grains of the wood are alternated, and by alternating, you want to make sure that they're different because up and down process here, because what will happen is it'll give you a nice flat surface once you start to laminate. The other thing is mark the boards. If you're satisfied with all the layout and the alternation of the grains, then mark them so that when you start to laminate this together, you have all the pieces fitting back in, and it makes a great job. I've placed pencil lines on the top surface of these boards where I want to put a pocket hole. Using the K2000 Kreg pocket hole jig, I now start to put in the holes. Now the pencil lines that have been put on the front here, I'm using those as a lineup, and as you notice on the jig itself here, there are lines, so I'll just set them in place, and that gives me the center point of where I'm going to come down through. Line up like so. Move the boards down into position in the next position. Now, got my assembly grid set up here. It even is put together with pocket holes as well, so very versatile in the way you could use this jig. Got my boards laid out, and I'm going to start working backwards. Remember, we start off with our G and come all the way down. Setting these in place, lining it up. I'm going to use my glue, charge my bottle, and a roller like this is kind of handy because you get to control how much glue you're putting on the surface. Get it started here and just run it back and forth. Take it down, put this in position, and line the first board up. And with my face clamp, and this one being the 6-inch, the largest one, the big surface goes on the face side and the smaller surface on the back side. So any irregularities, it will even it out and give me a really good smooth front, which is a lot easier in the end when we go to sand it down. It'll be almost pretty well virtually flat. You don't have to do this, but I like doing this as well. I like taking these the smaller face clamps, putting them at the end, setting them in place, and locking them in so that I get a really good hold on the sides. Come over here as well. And now, as I start to secure these, I follow this along with my large face clamp. And that really snugs it in nice and tight. The nice part about this, I don't need bar clamps. And the other good part about this is, I don't have to wait for the glue to dry or set up. I can just keep going. Bring it through. This is a simple, fast way and a strong way to laminate these boards. I'm using a number 7 screw here with a fine thread in the yoke. And the fine thread is recommended for hardwoods. Now let me turn this board over and show you how smooth and how nice and clean that joint is now. And you know what? It's going to be a minimal amount of sanding required here, so that's great. I'm going to keep on moving along here and put up my next board and finish this lamination. Now, there we have it. That's all those pocket holes in there. And remember, those are clamps. They're actually holding this whole thing together and until the glue sets up. But I don't have to wait for that, and I'm going to move on. Also remember that when you do this, make sure that you bring in the screws far enough because we're going to trim this down, and I don't want to cut into those screws. Now, should you have made a mistake and put the screws in the wrong spot, well, give it some time to set up, and you could pull the screws back out, cut it, and do it that way, but then again, you'd see the hole. So try not to put it in the area that you're going to do the cutting on. Right now, I'm looking for the size I'm going to make this. I've got a bit of a cutoff here, so I'm going to go 42 inches long and 26 inches wide. And that's going to give me a good sized surface area for a tabletop. And again, give yourself a little bit of extra wood on there so that you can do some trim up on it. And then I'm bringing it over here to the table saw to set it in place on here. I've set this up, and I've set it up so that I'm going to take about 1/4 of an inch off of this one side, just to clean up that edge. And I'm going to take off both sides because, again, there is a little bit of an irregularity where I've lined the boards up. Okay, and I'm going to start with the end grain first. I'm going to cut that off because as I go through here, I may experience a bit of tear out. And when I correct and clean up the sides here, that tear out will disappear. The next thing to do is to dress up the edges. And I'm going to start off with the end grain first. Because as I run this through, what's going to happen is any tear out that's going to come up is going to come up in that corner each time. Now, I'm going to use a router table. You could freehand this if you want. That's up to you. And also the profile that you put on here, well, that's your decision as well. I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch round over bit. I like the smoothness on the oak finish here, so I think it's going to be a real nice added touch to the edge as well. I'm using a feather board as well. And that's going to give me the consistent pressure on here so that I'm not going to be pushing my hand up and down and maybe getting a little sort of irregularities in here. So that's always a good way and a safe way, especially when using a board this size. What I've done is I've taken 2 pieces of 3/4 inch oak stock, laminated together, clamped it overnight, and then trimmed it down to 3 inches wide by 1.5. I'll find a location, set them in that spot, and what I'll also do is I'll end up taking them over to the router, rounding over 3 corners, and leaving the inside one sharp because of the shelf that we're putting in. Then I'll take it over to the saw and I'll kerf cut this down 1/4 inch, 1/16 of an inch deep, just to give it a decorative look. Now these are oversized just a bit right now, and I'm going to cut them down eventually when I finish doing all that to exactly 19 1/4 inches, because with this 3/4 inch top, it's going to give me a nice coffee table height of 20 inches. The next step is to place these legs. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to use the legs and the size of those. I'm going to start measuring out the area of where I want everything to go. I decided to go with a 1-inch overhang on the front and the side. So by dropping that in place, coming to the 1-inch mark, I'm just going to run around the whole table here at the corners and put in a 1-inch line. Now with a square, follow through, and just give myself a line to work off of here. Now the next thing I do is, remember I'm saying I'm going to put my legs facing in this direction like this because I want that sharp corner piece to come in because of the shelf that I'm going to be putting there as well. So this now gives me the direction I want to go with. I'm going to use that one piece cutoff there. It works a lot easier. I can see where everything's going to go. I can put it in place like this, overlook the edge, and this is just to give me the size and the dimension, or the length actually, of the skirt itself. Put it in here, there, and there. There's my plan. Everything is drawn on there, so now my cut list is here as well. So I don't have to sort of guess where the paper is. It's there. So when I put it down, I can see what I've got and what I have to build. To get the skirts, the thing I want to do with these as well is I'm going to take them over to the router table. I'm going to do this exact same profile here and put that round over on the edge, and I'll be putting that curve cut in there as well to add and to match the style of the legs and to carry this whole theme through the whole table. The next process after that is to cut them to length. Perfect, that looks great. Now the next step here is I've got to put pocket holes in here. Now I'm going to put the pocket holes down through the top portion here, which is actually going up in the underside of the tabletop, and I'm going to put 2 here that are going to support into the leg as well. Here's those 2 holes. And the nice part is I don't have to do any moving to the jig. The jig stays stationary. All those holes are stationary, and I move the material. Now, remember, when you put that in, that's going to go to the bottom. So the jig or the pocket hole has to go to the top. So set it in like so. And I'm going to space this out now. I want maybe about 2 inches in. And I'm going to put maybe 2 more in here. 1 there. 1 there. And let's put 1 more here. Now, looking at that, that gives me ample support to the tabletop and 2 good supports into the leg as well. So the next thing I want to do is I'm doing a little more here, and if you're into production at all or you're going to do a lot of stuff, you may want to consider this one as well. Kreg Jig also makes this, and it's called the Foreman. And the Foreman, well, it's going to speak for itself when I start using it. Same thing, I'm going to use my boards. This time I lay them on the table flat, and I set them in a position. Before I start, I just want to show you what's going to happen here. Here's a pneumatic drill. As I pull the handle down, air pressure causes it to hold the stock down, and the drill comes up and makes the pocket hole. And I'll show you how easy that is. Using these stops, gives me 2 perfect holes right where I want them. Bringing the stops and setting them again, using them. This time, I'm going to center it. I can come over a bit more, and I can use the edge here to give me another guideline, or I can come right into the stop itself. Check on the bottom here. And again. There it is, the last hole. Perfect. Now, you don't have to buy the Foreman for this table, but if you're doing a lot of production work, it's a great tool to have in your shop. K2000 works really well as well. Now, I've got everything set up in place here. Now, here comes the tricky part, is trying to remember how these legs go in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, it's going to come to the side like so, and let's just dry fit it, and that might help me as well. Set the skirt in place, and I want to come in to that position there. So by using a couple of spacers, and all it is some 1/2-inch plywood, bring the leg in place, set it down like so. And what this does now is it adds a little more detail into the actual project itself. Because when it's all done, it's the shadowing that is really going to make it look good. So the more detail and the more sort of indentations and profiles you can put on here, the better it is. Line this up like so again, and perfect. Now that's what I like about this. It just brings it in far enough, gives you a great sort of indentation here, and makes it really look good. And 2 more screws, and we're going to have our foundation to the table complete. Flip this over like so. And this is where we use our corners to line up the position here. Line up here. Let's take a look at that. Perfect. Pop that in a bit. And I'm just going to put a couple screws in here just to show you how this looks. And there we have it. Fast, simple, and strong. There's your coffee table. But we're going to take it to a level above. We're going to put another shelf in here and a set of drawers. But if this is where you want to stop, that's totally up to you. But we'll take you a bit further. The next thing to do is to build and attach the center shelf. Now I'm going to use ply material for the inside and edge band it with oak. Reason for this is that too much of solid wood in here is going to not really give me a lot of room for swelling and contracting. And what happens is if it does swell, there'll be a lot of pressure put on these 2 inside legs here, and we tend to want to push them out. So this way, with the laminate, it's going to give me a little more play, a little more sort of least resistance in trying to push that apart. Keep the solid for the top, because there is that better opportunity for it to swell and contract because there's no restrictions on it. Now what I want to do is make sure that everything's squared up. So I've taken a couple of pieces of scrap here and just set them in the corners because I want to make sure that that piece that I'm going to put in the middle, that ply material, is actually going to fit and is going to be square. Setting it down in place, I match it up, edge to corner, edge there, and edge here, and I like that. That looks great. The next thing I do is I oversize the pieces that I'm going to use for the edge banding. Put an X or a pencil mark on the outside so that you know that that is your outside. Now I've oversized this a bit so that I could trim this off, and it's going to be easier to trim off and better to trim off by the time I'm done. Everything looks good. I like it. I have to put some pocket holes in the ply material, but I also have to put a little bit of a detail here. I want to make a little kerf cut, or maybe a better term for that is a rabbet, around the edge of this whole board, just so there's a bit of a difference, so that when the staining goes on, you'll get a nice little dark line, which actually gives it a better transition between the real wood and the veneer as well. So let me take this over to the saw. Putting on a secondary fence, I line it up like so and clamp it into position. This will now allow me to sort of overhang that blade and give me a better approach to being able to set that up. Drawing it through, there's a bit of a board here, and I just want to make sure that I've got a bit of a rake on it, which I do. Good. Now, this is going to be my sacrificial piece, and the concept that I'm trying to come up with is just to take a real slight little kerf off of there, or create a rabbet there, and give it a real nice sort of attractive look. Line this up by eye, come into here, and I've got about half that blade exposed now. I'm going to start the saw up, and I'm going to give it a test run here. perfect, look at that. That's just enough to go in here. Really great. Now when I end up putting that edge banding on there, that's just going to have that little bit of a recess, and because that's nice fresh wood there, it's going to take a stain and make that a little bit darker compared to all the other stain that's going to go on it. And it's almost going to look like a detail that we've purposely put in there, which we did. Now, first thing I have to do is I have to put some pocket holes in the back here. So in this case, I want to have a good number in here, and I'm just going to pencil a few off here. So let's put one here, 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 and here. So 5 down the side, because that edge banding is going to go on. I want to make sure that it's on nice and tight. And let's try it through here, here. Now working with plywood material, it's nice and it cuts through quite well. MDF, any kind of material can be used. Actually, plastics can even be used with the pocket hole jig, so it really cuts well into everything. Now is the time to put some pocket holes into our edge banding because I need some to attach it onto the leg. I've marked them already, and what I've done here, and I'll do these side pieces first, I'm going to take it here and I'm going to use these 2 holes that are side by side. It's a 9/16 inch center from center to center point of those holes, those guide holes. Set it in place, and that's going to give me 2 holes nice and tight together, and it's going to make that really strong when I attach it to the leg. Bring it back and tighten down that screw. Flip this over. Look at that. There's that hole. Nice and tight together where I want them. Now for the side pieces, or the side of the the table itself, I only need 1 screw hole here. There, all my pieces are ready to be assembled now. Just bring this back. And I'm going to use this universal bench clamp. Kind of nice because all that pressure that's going to be on that plate here is really going to help me because I've got a little bit of inconsistency in wood sizes. This, the ply veneer is not a true 3/4 where this is. So that's a good way to use this clamp. Bit glue down the edge here. Spread that out. Now set that in place, and those holes will be the same position facing up as the pocket holes in the tabletop portion. Set it in place. Make sure it's even on both sides and clamp down. Perfect. Now again, hardwood, I'm using a fine thread screw. Come from this opposite side here and pull that in tight. And just make sure that everything's lined up. It is. Good. Look at that, squeeze in. Move it along. As I'm coming along here, I'm able to keep an alignment here. If I ended up doing this end and this end, what would happen is there could be a possibility of a bow there. So I want to make sure I start from one end and move this way. There it is. Let's see how that turned out. Just remove that out of the center. Flip this over and look at that. Perfect. Now, if you look down that little bit of a rabbit we created, if there's any bit of glue in there, just take a screwdriver edge or just a bit of an edge and just run it down. This looks pretty good, but I'm just going to run it through just in case we got anything on there. So far, so good. Nice. Perfect. Good. Could do a little sanding on this if you wanted to, but you know what? I'm not even going to touch it right now. It looks great where it is. Now, here's the thing we have to do. We have to test it and see if it worked. Now, I did take the liberty of putting some more extensions in, and these extensions are 8 3/4 inches. Oh, look at that. Isn't that nice? Good. Here's those holes we put in first in these in the side pieces here, the add-ons. And here's the single pocket hole. So this is now going to attach to the leg. But before I do that, I oversized this. So I have to bring down to 2.5 inches here, to 1 inch here, and I'm going to do that on the table saw. Now, I guess you're a little worried about these pocket hole screws coming through and I was trimming off. No worry. What I've done here is this is a model of how far those screws come through. Now, again, stock varies as well. This is 1/2 inch stock, 3/4 inch stock, and 1.5 inch stock. So the size of screws fall down through there as well. Now, let's stick to this darker one in the middle here. That is the 3/4 inch stock we're working with. I'm using a 1 1/4 inch screw. By going through that stock, I still have plenty of space here. It only comes out at about 5/8 of an inch. So in this case, I've got lots to trim off. So if you've got an inch band, which I have on this side, I have lots of space. Now it's time to round over the edge banding, and I'm going to do it on the top side of the shelf, not on the bottom, because remember, I'm going to go further than this. I'm going to put more onto this as we go along. It doesn't matter which way I start here now because I have no end grain. This has all been covered and taken care of. Turn on the router, dust collection, and time to start. Now with some pocket screws, set those in place. Remember, we're using a fine thread here. Fine thread with a number 7 1 1/4 inch. Pull that into that corner. Good there. I'm going to come on this end as well. This time, you don't have to drive it too far into the board. Just as long as it snugs up, that's all you want. And again, no glue required here. It's not necessary. On the side. This is really going to tighten this whole table up. Now, if you don't want to put a shelf in here, you could just put support brackets across, through the sides, through the middle, or all the way around the outside of it as well. So it's another option you could go with. And there it is. Coffee table, 20 inches high, with a shelf. Hey, no, I'm not happy yet. I'm going to keep going on with more.
Kreg Tool also offers many accessories, including face clamps, right-angle clamps, coarse and fine-threaded self-tapping screws, and much more. The versatility of pocket hole joinery gives it the power to benefit any level of woodworker. For the dealer nearest you, call 800-447-8638 or visit www.kregtool.com today.
Now the first thing I want to do is I want to dry fit my drawer slider system here that I'm building. The two end pieces, they're going to sit flush in between these two legs, and again nice and snug. Flush it to the front, same with the back, flush it in position, and then my two end pieces. One goes inside the leg here, one in here. And what I've done is I've divided that off in the center. I've given myself a 1 inch line because this is 2 inch wide stock. Set this in place and match it up like so as well. Next thing I'm going to do is I've just marked all the places and locations I'm going to put pocket holes. These two on this one are going to go into the leg. The side piece here is going to go into that frame structure as well. Again, bring it in all the way through so that we're building the frame first. And as a matter of fact, this is the exact same way as you would build a face frame. So there's no difference here. So we're learning a couple of different things as we go along. Using the two 9/16 offset guides, that really makes a nice tight fit here. So you can go to a fairly narrow stock to use that and have really good results with it. And here's our last two holes. The nice part about this jig is that I don't have to move the jig around. Simply move the material back and forth, and it gives me the perfect location for each pocket hole. And having the 3 holes there gives me a variety I can choose from as well. Using this universal bench clamp gives me a really good surface to hold this down. And I lock it in place like so. Perfect. And once again, this whole project all the way through, we're going to keep working with fine thread screws because it's hardwood that we're dealing with here. First one. Now, don't put this side on yet, because if we put this side on, we're going to try and fight with putting all these pieces in. So go down the whole side here first, and that way we can still add our glue in, and it still gives us a good area, a good surface area to work with. One more there. And I'll just rub that off so it doesn't run. Set that under that table, save that for later. And the last piece to go in position here. And clamp it down. Remember, this is fast, it's a strong joint, and it's simple to do. With bar clamps, it would take me a little more time, and I'd have to clamp that together, wait up for the glue time to happen, and guess what? Face frame or whatever we're doing with it, there it is. I can just keep on moving with this as well. Next step, I have to put a round over on the outer side of that longer part of the table, on the underneath side, just a 1/4 inch round over a bit with a top bearing, just to curve that in. Perfect. Now that's the underside that I want this on. So make sure we put that on. This is the way the frame goes. Clean side down. And I'm just going to dry fit this again. And set this in place. Perfect. Good. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to create a divider here. And that divider is also going to have a lower block that's going to go across, because I'm going to show you another little trick that I want to do here, where I want to make this a self-centering drawer. So next step, the divider. This will sit on the front because I don't want any end grain showing here. I want the same flat grain showing at the front, because if we put end grain going across on that end, it's going to be darker. It's going to draw a focal point to that one spot, because everything else here, there's no end grain exposed. By setting this in place like so, this piece here will come up inside, and again, we're working upside down here, and that will give me the support for my drawer slides as I go through. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this off and spread these holes out a little bit. Bring it back over here. And I'm making them a bit wider here now, because what I want to do next is I want to put a pocket hole on this side in the middle of those two holes as a bit of an extra support and give it more added strength to the whole project. And there's my next piece to be applied. I take my two pieces here, and remember, I want a nice end or side grain here. I don't want an end grain showing at that front. It's important. Setting this in place, put a little bit of glue on the end. I'll swing this around there so you can see that. And again, lock this in place. Make sure it's flush. And now adding in the screws. There, now that's that support. And that support's going to go this way now. You'll see it better when I set it in place. Right in here. Remember, we've got a center line coming down, and that's going to be the divider. Now it also is the slider compartment that allows the drawer to slide through. But before I attach all this, there's a couple things I have to do to this piece yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put an earth magnet in here. And that earth magnet is going to sit with the cup inside, so I have to recess that in here. And this washer goes on the drawer side. So what happens is that when it comes across, the magnetic pull from this side and this side will stop the drawer in the middle, so it doesn't overpush or overpush through. So it's kind of a neat way to do this. What I've done is I've used a 1 1/8 inch Forstner bit here, and the reason I'm using a 1 1/8 inch is because the size of that cup that the earth magnet sits in is 1 1/8 inch. So what I do now is, because I don't want these back to back, because believe it or not, they're so strong, they'll go through that 3/4 inch, and they'll actually go through 1.5 inches of wood. And if you have reverse pull on it, you'll have pushing instead of pulling. So what we want to do is come in here. I'm going to draw a line at the 12.5-inch mark on this side, flip it over, and draw a mark on the 12.5-inch on this side so they're offset. So if I'm looking down at it, perfect. And I'm also going to transfer that onto the drawer when I do that. Line it up, set this in place, check my marking, and there it is. Next, I'm going to pop that in here. Nice flush on either side. And remember, as I said, and I'll just show this one just to give you an example of the distance that it's offset. So nice and far away from each other. Two there. And now I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to put one in the center of the board. So we'll find my location there. And one more in here. So I've put a center line here, and from that center line, I've also marked out 3/8 of an inch because I'm using 3/4 inch stock. So that's going to give me my lineup that I set in place there and down here. I'm going to use my large corner angle clamp here. Pressure off a bit. There, perfect. Now, a few screws. I've got some here. I'll put one in for this first part. And before I stick that one in, I'll come to the other side here. Line this up like so, and set the next screw in here. Now, the next step, coming back to the top again. The round over on the bottom, remember, keep the pocket holes down here. This is the good side of the frame, and that's the side we want to go into the drawer box. So line this up, and this time, it's a little snug, and I want it fairly snug because I want to be able to do some movement back and forth here. But this time, just use this spacer here, do an alignment, and that's going to tell you where you're going to go with the frame. Perfect, I like that. Great. A few more screws, and we're on our way to building our drawer. Come around here. I'll just come in through this way. One there. And just to start off, we'll put one in each corner to get us going here. Good. That's everything in position there. Now, it's time to set this in. Now, that's straight. Looking at it, it's nice and tight to the bottom here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to use a Forstner bit, and I'm still going to use the pocket hole screws, but what I want to do is I want to drill in from the underside here. So I'm just going to put my two lines here and here, and I'm just going to use a small Forstner bit just to give myself a recess in here. Set it in place like so. And one over here. Take this like so, and again, that's straight. It's lined up with that line. Look at that, nice and tight and snug. Well, the next thing to add now are the drawers. And these are the drawer fronts. Now, with the drawer fronts, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to also do a curve cut in the top and at the bottom. But I'm not going to round it over because if you look here, I've got a nice crisp edge here and a crisp edge here, and I want that to match in as well. A little bit of sanding on that with a little bit of sandpaper, just take off that real sharp point of it, but again, not a complete round over. Measuring the distance, well, what I've done here is I've gone in and I've taken it from the back side, and I've got 23 inches across. I'm going to deduct 3/4 of an inch for the front drawer, 3/4 of an inch for the back drawer, so my running side for the drawer is going to actually be 21.5 inches. Going to this side from the leg and over, I've got exactly 18 inches, and I'm going to take off about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch because I'm going to allow for a bit of movement for the drawer fronts as well. So when that's all said and done, let's start building the drawers. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to dado out a section here for the bottom of the drawers. And I'm using a 1/4 inch ply, but it's actually really 3/16 of an inch. So make sure that when you do this, you take it and keep measuring as you're going along so you don't oversize it, and obviously you don't want to undersize it either. I'm just going to use my saw blade here, the 1/8 inch curve cut saw blade. And you know what? You don't have to have a dado set in here, so you can do it this way, and I'm going to show you how. The first thing I want to do is I want to set up my fence a 1/4 inch away so that I've got a good base holding that in. That 1/4 inch is going to be enough of a lip to grab into that. So set that up like so. I've set this up to a 1/4 inch in depth, and then I've just given it that little bit of a twitch to come up a little bit higher just for a little bit of a turn. And again, that's just so I have a little more rude movement to go through here. Turn on my dust collection. Start off with my drawer fronts. And this is a time when you might want to inspect as to where you want it. And with this, we're going to be able to say, yeah, this is my top and this is the bottom. So I'm going to make this the bottom on this one. Now that's my next cut there. That's the last one I've done on that. Now I want to shift the saw blade over. So I can go over this way and just take it over just to the middle of that mark of the, just shy of 1/8 of an inch. Start it again. At this point in time, I want to do a test on this as well. That's perfect. Gives me a nice snug fit with a little bit of movement in there for any kind of swelling or contraction that's going to go on there. Perfect. That's the dry fit. Everything fits nice, and it's always good to check first because if it is a little oversized, you can trim it down before you put it all together. Next step from here is put the pocket holes down these outside drawer sides, and we're going to put them on the inside so they're not visible. But before I do that, guess what? I've got to put the receiver for the magnet on this side. Now remember, on this one, we're going to put the washer in on this side. And I think I've got it marked here. I do. That's where the magnet will go. And that will now allow that lineup to happen. First thing I want to do is on the inside here, I want to put some pocket holes. So I'm going to go over here to my jig, set it in place, and I'm going to put 3 in here on either side. And I'm putting them on the inside as well. One there. I like operating and using this jig because it allows me to really start putting the project together quickly and saves me time. I don't have to wait for long glue up times, and even though the glue I'm using here sets up in 20 minutes, I still need to clamp that for that period of time. And I can do a bit more of the project, but I have to still wait until everything sort of falls in place. If you've seen, we've gone through this project now, this table, and with the progression we've gone through, there would have been some downtime waiting for glue to dry. Using this as a clamp is basically what I'm doing, and that's now allowing me to keep working. So the next piece now is the face. There's our face again, our two lines we put in there, curve cuts we put in. And I want to now line this up, make sure everything sits in place, come around, and time to add a little bit of glue. Just a slight bead in there. It doesn't have to be a lot. Set it in place like so. Move it back and forth just a bit so it seats into the pores of the wood. Having a hammer close by, Now that's for the fine tune-ups, and I'll show you how to tune this up should we need just a slight adjustment. Setting this in place like so. Now remember, hardwood, we're using a fine thread, and on softwood we would use a coarse thread. Perfect, look at that. One more here. Take my clamp off. And once again. Good. Now this ply is cupped just a little cup in there, but what we do is set it down, push the bottom in, that's it. Dry fit again. I always make sure that everything's done well and done right before I put any glue on anything. Perfect, I like that. Glue on the outsides, just a little bit. This time, let's set this on first. And then what I'll do is I'll flip this over like this. Now, you're not going to see anything if I stay back here, so let me come around here and show you from here. So the exact same thing again. We're going to go into this position. I'm going to line up the one side first. I'll line up this side here for you. Put a pocket hole screw in the back here. Remember, flush at the top, flush at the back. That's in place. Take off my clamp now, and that's still a little proud. So what I'll do is take an additional clamp, set it in place, bring it in tight. Again, block that with the 6-inch large clamp. Put the next screw in. Good. And remove this clamp now. And look at that. That's now straight. Clamp off at the back. Look at that. Straight, it's flush, nice and clean. The next thing I want to show you is the sides. I didn't do anything on the sides yet because I want to put a skirt in there, but before I put that cover in there, I want to be able to have access in here so I can get at everything. Now that everything's in place, I'm going to set my skirt in place, measure the distance I need, trim it down, and add it to the table as well. Also, I want to put a hole in here for that earth magnet to set in place. Now I want to put the pocket holes in these side boards. All right, that's 197. $98. 199 holes so far. And we're not finished yet, there's more to come. Now, there it is. Those are the two skirts, they're already pre-drilled. And I come over here, I've got my two side pieces to go in place. Set this in. Now, there's where the earth magnet goes. We're not going to put that in yet, right? So just dry fit it again. Take a look here. That will go well there. Okay, perfect. Onto this side. Perfect as well. Now, I want to add these cups in. Now this cup's going to set in place here, but before we put it in, I just want to show you here. What we've done is we've taken the hacksaw and we've cut little grooves in the side here. And the reason I've done that is because if I ever want to take that earth magnet out of there, I can just dig into the wood with the grain and dig underneath the magnet itself and pop it out. 1/2-inch screw, just set it in place, tighten it down, perfect. Now, look at this earth magnet here, how this works. Remember, I've offset these two because I didn't want them back to back because of the polarity. Well, watch this. That's where that other one is. So on the other side, it'll be there as well. So if I had two back to back, it wouldn't want to stick. It would keep wanting to flip back and forth, and it won't stick to it. So again, offsetting it and putting it in place, there it is. That's in. Now, there's also the rocket that comes in the kit. And this is one we haven't shown yet. But with this one, it's portable. It allows you to get into tight spots, set in place, lock in position, and just drive it home and follow through on that guide. Now to help me line that up, I'm going to take the large face clamp, little spacer in the back here, just so that everything comes up nice and flush, and lock that into position. And that's great. That gives me a good flat surface there to work with. Screw in the middle first. Swing this around. Take that filler piece with me. Bring it over to this side. And again, lock it in place to there. Now this is important that this is flush because this is where the drawer is going to be sliding back and forth. So you want to make sure that it's going to hold in nicely there. Good. And I'll continue this process right around to the other side. There's some room for 2 more screws to go in, and that's down this center piece here. That is the base that holds the drawers and is actually working as the sliders. Again, forcer bit, big enough to take that head of the screw, and 2 more pocket hole screws. 207 now, is it? But who's counting? Drop this in place. Look at that, pulls that in nice and tight. And done. Magnets go in place. This one first here. Set that in like so. This one here like this. And the project is finished. Here it is, the last drawer to go into our coffee table. Now, I did put in some silicone tape here because I don't want the bottom of this drawer rubbing wood on wood. It makes it slide a lot easier, and it just does a better job having it in there. Push it through, you hear that click? Well, that's those magnets catching onto the drawer. Here it is, it's done. It has a lot of holes in it, and it was fun to make. So with the knowledge of this tape and the use of this jig, you should be able to make yourself any kind of table at all. The idea, the concept, the way it's all put together, keep that in mind as you're building. And the only thing that's going to limit you is your imagination. You can keep going and going and going. The jig itself, well, it makes the job faster, it makes the joint stronger, and most of all, it makes the whole project simple. So, in my opinion, everyone should have one of these in their workshop. For more information or to find your local Kreg tool dealer, visit www.kregtool.com or call 1-800-447-8638.